Hi everyone, welcome back, and this video we're going to talk about analysis. So the analysis of this report is very, very simple, so hopefully suitable for both undergrads and postgrads attempting to evidence some core research method skills. So we are going to run through some code I have written to automate the analysis process. Now, obviously, you can take the Excel file of either the raw data or the processed data and play with it in whichever ways you like. So if you have experience using, for example, SPSS, it's not great for reproducibility, but if you've been taught using that software, use it. You certainly don't have to use this. So I encourage you to play with it in whichever way you find easiest. I'm using R and RStudio specifically because this code can then be shared with other people who can then reproduce what I find and report from the data. So I encourage everybody to explore those sorts of options. I know some universities do teach using R, which is amazing and fantastic. Some use more open access click and drag type software, so stuff like JASP or Jamovi. And if anybody's interested, I've made a whole video on how to do basically an undergraduate research methods curriculum in Jamovi. But we're going to run with this one today, if that's all right. And I'm going to show you exactly kind of the core things that we're going to consider in analysis. So we start off by, again, loading packages of interest. And this one is one of my favorites. It's called APA tables. And it basically helps to create APA-style tables that it automatically outputs from the data. So very lazy of me, but I love it. Next up, what we want to do is acknowledge that we're going to use our processed data as our data. And the analysis is going to start off with some chi-square tests. And these are, in essence, checking that our manipulation of the for example, this first one is the work environment, actually was successful. So basically what we want to see is that participants in different conditions reported different responses to the manipulation check question. And anything that isn't non-significant or anything that looks like a small effect here is problematic. So what we should expect to see is a massive effect and a very meaningful difference, because ultimately that will help demonstrate that our manipulation was successful. So what we do is we run our chi-squared test, and very helpfully it reports to you right at the bottom here all the information that you need to report. So here our chi-squared value is 15.655, our degrees of freedom are 2, and our p-value is 0.0004. That is good news. So that tells us that people responded differently to our manipulation check item based on what condition they're in, which is obviously exactly what we want. And we can run that again for our different things. So that was for our work experience. This was peer influence. We can see a very similar result. So perhaps a slightly more modest effect, but nevertheless statistically significant, what looks to be a promising result. And again, the third is the manager influence, and this was a big effect and all statistically significant, which is good. This isn't really ideal as the way to analyze it. Preferably you'd look at each group and each response and go through it more systematically. This was, however, to try and replicate as closely as possible the previous literature. And indeed, the Jones and Kavanagh paper simply ran a chi-squared test. So that is that. Now what we want to do is to recode the data so it is suitable for analysis. So here we are making sure that it's clear what the sex groups are, and so for example coding male to be 0 and female to be 1, and then recoding quality of work experience to be, for instead of high and low, to be 0 or 1s, and the same with manager and peer influence to be 0 and 1. So basically it's working with numbers is much easier and helps us when we're trying to do things like correlation matrices and things like that. So we run that, and that has converted. So now pretty much everything in our data file should be numbers, because these are all the things that we're going to try and correlate and have a look at are similar. Now, just a very tedious thing to change the column orders so that when we have our outputs, the column orders are in the same order as the original study. So we're just rearranging the column orders there, nothing interesting happening. And basically what we're then going to do is we're going to have a look and run some correlations based upon that. And as you can see here, we've put our order here, and our data correlation is, or rather the data separated out ready for correlating is here. So we can see everything that is useful to know. Then what we can ask for is to essentially create us a table or a correlation matrix, in essence. So let me open it up and show you. So what I've just done is I've run that code, and what it's done is it's saved a file that's called core.doc in my working directory. And my working directory is, for the purposes of this video, my desktop. And this is what it spits out. So it shows you here all the information that you would report in your dissertation or in the write-up of this in the format. It can be directly copy and pasted. So you can see here we've got means and standard deviations. We don't need our internal reliability or Cronbach's alphas or things like that because we've already looked at them. And we can see here all our correlation coefficients with confidence intervals as well. So that tells us lots of really useful information. And obviously you can tidy up these variable names. So, this is quality of work experience, this is manager influence, etc. And you can see there are, as noted by the little stars, there are a few statistically significant results. So this one, there is a modest relationship between 7 and 5, which is social desirability and Machiavellianism. And there is an even weaker negative relationship still between behavioral intentions and sex. So that gives us an early indication of what we might expect our results are going to tell us. But as I said, this is a perfect table to copy and paste straight into your report. It tells us lots of information. I guess the value here is in you explaining, what are the things that I should be looking for in this particular matrix, and why might they be important or tell us something useful. So finally, we've got one more thing. As you can see, the actual analysis for this project is super, super easy. The final thing that we're going to do is a regression. And we're going to try and see which variables predict our outcome variable, which is our behavioral intentions total. So this is what we're doing. This first code builds the model. So here what we're just saying, our regression model is a linear model. We're trying to predict behavioral intentions total from quality of work experience, manager influence, peer influence, locus control, MAC, and sex. And the data is in the data file in the thing called data core. And then basically we're running another piece of that lovely APA tables package that says, I want you to run that model with that data and spit it out in my desktop. So we run that. Oh, I haven't done the first bit. So we create the regression model, and then we run that, and done. And so then we have a lovely document called reg.doc in our desktop, and we open it up, and this is what we get. And so this is ultimately your core results for this study, and it basically tells you which of these variables contribute to variance in behavioral intentions. And so you might want to look at a variety of different things. So the R is your correlation value, and so you might recognize 0.24 from previously. We've got our R squared value, which tells us we can explain about 14% of variance in behavioral intentions, which is not massive. I might imagine this is a combination of a small sample size and due to it there being a lot of non-significant and small effects, as we might expect in this field, and we've got confidence intervals that tell us it's somewhere between 0 and 0.23. Well, it's plausibly, based on the data, plausibly within those brackets. And so from here, you might want to choose whether you want standardized or unstandardized beta values, and it will normally tell you to what extent the strength with which these variables predict our outcome. As you can see, they're pretty variable. I think we can conclude from this one there are perhaps 3 variables of greatest interest: sex, locus of control, and peer influence, and the rest look to be fairly modest. But again, this will depend entirely on what your data looks like. And again, you can copy and paste this table straight into your dissertational report, and it is good to go. And again, the value you add here is explaining what this means. So what are the core results? What are the core conclusions you could draw from it? And if it helps, you can also think about it not just in terms of individual variables, but think about it in the 2 categories of variables. That is, the individual factors and the situational factors, the contextual factors, and so which seem to have greatest influence. And so you can turn that into an interesting conversation, and you can also use these beta and R values to compare to those described in the original paper, or indeed those summarized in the stage 1 registered report, and talk about why might the sizes of effect, why might the strength of relationship or strength of prediction differ between this and the previous works. So that is it, my shortest video to date, and it's on analysis. So I consider that to be a massive win. I really hope this helps you kind of work through and think about what's important and interesting and useful to talk about in terms of the results of this project. And I hope it gives you a little bit of structure of knowing how to move forward and how to run with it. So as always, everything I go through is openly available on the OSF page, so you can do all these things yourself. I'm very happy to support anybody who would value that and would find that useful. And in the meantime, I wish you all the very best. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.